All right, so when you make your corrections, like everybody can for sure get 10 out of 10 on this quiz, but you're not guaranteed that. So some people don't have to watch the video because they got it originally. Right now, you just have a M sitting in there, and once you fix it, I'll replace it, but you're not guaranteed 10 points. So make sure you listen carefully on how you need to make these corrections. You do not need to redo the whole quiz. All you have to do is fix the ones you got wrong, but you have to also explain what you got wrong. So, and I want it done on a blank sheet of unlined paper, which there's some up front on my front table, so you should go grab that. And I'll talk through as we go what you need to do to make sure you get the 10 out of 10. All right, it's going to be on the quality of your corrections that you will be graded. All right, so I'm going to go through all of them. If you don't have anything circled in number 1, you're going to fast forward me until I'm doing the one you had an issue with. If your only problem was number 5, fast forward all the way to the end of this and only fix that one. I guarantee on your test all of these are hit. So of the 18 or so problems, here's 5 of them. Fix them now before the test because there's no opportunity to fix them after. So we're going to make sure we got these down. And I'm going to go full screen on you. And we'll start with number 1. So we're going to solve this. First thing we're going to do, again, if you got it wrong on a blank sheet of paper, you're going to rewrite the problem. So I want you to rewrite the problem. And at the point that you made the mistake, you're going to explain what your mistake was. I think everybody started by dividing by 4. So, but if you were out there and you accidentally took the square root first, and then you would say, well, I accidentally square rooted before I divided. So you're going to explain yourself in some words next to your corrections. So you should have cosine squared x equals 1/4. The next step is where many of you need to explain what your mistake was. There were 2 issues with the next step. We know that we take the square root of both sides. The issue is the square root of 1/4 is not root 2 over 2. So those of you who put plus or minus root 2 over 2, you're going to say, I made a silly mistake. The square root of 1 is 1. The square root of 4 is 2. I should have had a half. Those of you who left a half, you're going to explain to me that your issue was that it should have been plus or minus. So if you get how this works, you explain where your mistake occurred and what the issue was. So again, if my mistake was right here on my corrections, I would write, I accidentally forgot the plus or minus. Consequently, and you'll see what you would write next. So what happens if you forgot the plus or minus is you end up missing 2 of the answers. So we need to figure out where on the unit circle, and you would draw one of these on your correction. So maybe you're like, I got it right up there. What's wrong with mine? It means that what was wrong with yours is you didn't interpret your unit circle correctly. So there's, the different errors within the problem. Did you break the rules of order? Did you take an incorrect square root, which some of you did? There are a lot of root 2's over 2, and then your answers came out to be like pi fourths and stuff. Some of you forgot the plus or minus on the half. If you got to here, your mistake was that you didn't know exactly where the cosine is 1/2. So remember, I said I anchor myself over here at pi over 6, and I know there's a half in the sine slot, which means cosine is a half up here at pi thirds. So I know that pi over 3 is one of my answers. So x would equal pi over 3. That's one of the places where we have a positive a half. I'm also got the same cosine up here. And again, cosine is to the right and then to the left, or I could go down here to the right and then here to the left. So it makes like this rectangle in here. So pi thirds is one of the answers. Right here would be 2 pi over 3, right? Then we've got 3 pi over 3 and then 4 pi over 3. And then this last one over here is 5 pi over 3. All right, so those are the 4 answers. If you only have 2, you forgot the plus or minus. So again, you're going to have to explain what your mistakes are and then fix them. So this would be, and consequently, I missed 2 answers. And then you won't do that if I put one of these on the test. You'll give me 4 answers if there's a squaring of the trig problem. I missed 2 answers. All right? If your mistake was you used the unit circle incorrectly, you're going to draw one and you're going to draw it correct. All right? You don't automatically get 10 out of 10. That's the most you can get for how thorough you are with your corrections. So just because this is the first time you're doing it. It's kind of neat. You get to pick what your own grade is, right? But then on the test, we're done. So this is a complex fraction. I do these with the crisscross multiply across method. If you use the other method and did it incorrectly, you might want to switch. We always start in the top left. Again, if your mistake was you started on the other diagonal, you would write that in words. So if you can put it in words, you probably won't make that mistake again. So I do criss minus cross. Some of you, your mistake was right there. You didn't put it in parentheses. So you would tell me that. My answer ended up being wrong because originally I didn't put that whole denominator in parentheses. All over multiply across, right? I called that crisscross applesauce. And then it's all over x. Now, whenever we have the primary division bar, we multiply by the reciprocal of the bottom. Multiplying by 1 over x, though, just collapses it as a product down there. If you left this, I marked it wrong because it's not simplified. So maybe that was your issue. Again, we individualize our mistakes. Also, some of you multiplied these in. We always leave things factored so we can see what cancels. So some of you multiplied that whole bottom out and you couldn't see that stuff actually cancels. So that's another thing. You might say, I didn't realize I should leave it all factored, but now I do. You're going to write words and sentences next to this stuff. Words and sentences. All right, there we go. The 2's cancel, right? Now, you'll see that the x's cancel. And if you distributed on the bottom, you wouldn't have seen that. So maybe, that's a minor mistake, easy to fix, just don't do it again. There are a couple people who just made a little mistake, like they had them negative here and didn't put it here. Those are the type I don't make you fix. I just circle it and you're going to go, oh, what a bonehead mistake, right? Most of you've got these parts right on the unit circle, but there were some sign errors, like some SIGN errors. So on your corrections for these, if you're making corrections, I want you to draw yourself the cheater unit circle. I want you to get to this angle right here. This is 6 pi sixths, half of a circle, that's pi. 7 pi sixths is right here. I need to do secant. So it means I need to figure out, and you should write this out, secant is going to be 1 over the cosine there. We need to understand that the cosine there will be the x value there. So somehow I need to figure out what's the x value over here so I can flip it or do 1 over it. Well, its reference angle is over here. Just head straight through the origin there. So remember, Leroux said, I'm Leroux, there's a half in the far right, meaning there's a root 3 over 2 right here. So question mark is actually a negative because this is to the left. So this is a negative root 3 over 2. I don't really care that the y is negative a half. So I have that negative, sorry, I wrote root 3 times 2, negative. It's like, that doesn't look right. Negative root 3 over 2, correct? So 1 over that just flips it. So I get 2 over root 3, but it is negative, and you can leave that. We don't need to rationalize denominator. Some of you did, and those who did it right, so obviously I wouldn't mark it wrong. But you can go ahead and leave that. The biggest mistake for this one was missing the sign. So in words, you would tell me the SIGN should have been negative because cosine is negative, because cosine is the x and the x's are negative in quadrant 3. The more thorough you are, the more likely you are to get a 10 out of 10. Somebody who has every single one of these wrong can get 10 out of 10 as long as you're very thorough with how you correct it. And I'm talking you through a lot of that right now because it's our first time doing it. So the sign is the y value. I need to get to 4 pi over 3. 1 pi over 3, 2 pi over 3, here's 3 pi over 3 or pi. 4 pi over 3 is right here. So it's also 8 pi over 6 if you want to count by pi 6. But it's right there. I need the y value there. I should immediately put a negative down because the y value there is negative. But what is it? Head straight through the origin to its reference in the first. LaRude says she always remembers that this one over here has a half in the far right, which would mean this one is flipped. Okay, so when I'm doing the sign, I'm doing the y. And a lot of you put 3 over 2, but you forgot we're actually in quadrant 3. It should be negative. So most errors there were sign errors. This one was the most missed, and it's because this one actually came off the Delta Math assignment. So first thing I need to do is simplify. This is actually called a difference quotient. And to simplify a difference quotient, the first thing you need to do is figure out what is f of x plus h. So I'm going to write that down. F of x plus h. We'll put an x plus h into the function. So that means I will have a negative, the input squared plus twice the input minus 1. This is just the f of x plus h. Then I'm going to FOIL this. Maybe off onto the side, or if you have it memorized, but I'll need to FOIL that. I'll keep the negative running with it, so I have the negative. I'll have x squared plus xh, so plus 2xh, plus h squared, right? The negative's in front. Then I have plus 2x plus 2h minus 1. That's f of x plus h. Next thing I need to do is take that and subtract f of x. So I'm going to write that over here. So I have f of x plus h, which would be a negative x squared, might as well get that out of the parentheses, right? Minus 2xh minus h squared, boom, 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 distributing the negative in, plus the 2x, plus the 2h, right? Whoops, that's a funky looking 2, plus the 2h minus 1. That is f of x plus h. Done. Then it says to subtract f of x. Well, here's f of x. Now, when I subtract this, what's going to happen is the signs are going to change. Because when I subtract the negative x squared, it'll be plus x squared. Then I'll subtract the 2x, and then I'll subtract the negative 1. So there's my entire numerator. And it's all over. With this difference quotient, those of you who did the Delta Math, you'll notice that a lot of stuff starts to cancel. To be honest, usually everything that doesn't have an h in it cancels, if you heard what I said. That would be something to write like in your thing for getting it wrong. I'm going to keep in mind that almost everything without an h in it cancels when I do this. That'll really help prevent some mistakes. So everything without an h in it canceled. I can factor an h out on the top and then cancel it with the bottom. So I'll leave that to you, but you can factor an h out of, let me see if I can find a highlighter here. Let's see if that'll go. Sorry, I'm trying to get a highlighter going here, but I think I have to do it with the red. I should have my finger activated as a highlighter. But anyway, you're going to factor an h out, an h out, and an h out, and then you can cancel it with the bottom, which means the final answer is negative 2x minus h, because I have to factor it out of here, plus 2. That was the correct final answer. You might want to run through that one a second time. And last up, the piecewise function. I'll put the little bracket on here. Remember when I talked about these, I said go ahead and put the fence on there. I've got a fence at negative 2 right here. And then I also have a fence at 1. So I have 2 fences. Then I'm going to go graph this one. Everywhere to the left of negative 2, I'm going to see where I am on the fence. And if your mistake was you used slope-intercept form and it threw you off, you'll write me a note about that. If you like plotted 0, 3, I wouldn't do that because we're not in that part of the region of the graph. So I'll do negative 1/2 of negative 2, which is 1, right, when I plug it in right here, plus 3 is 4. So I'm going to plot the point -2, comma 4. I want to know what happens on the fence. And it gets to be a solid dot. So -2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nice solid dot right there. Then I'd use the slope. This line goes down 1 over 2. And you might say, well, I put a thing on Drew like that. Yeah, that's not where we do that, though. We have to do it to the left of -2. So I like to go up 1, back 2, just kind of slope it backwards, and it goes like that. Some of you guys had lines going like this, but negative slopes, downhill lines. Then I have a parabola. Some of you are going to write, I didn't get the vertex in the correct spot. The vertex of this parabola is at what makes that chunk equal to 0 and whatever's being added on. So the vertex is at -1, 0. Some of you had that in the wrong spot. That'll be easy to explain. Remember I said we also want to know what happens on the fence. Well, the parabola is between both fences, so I have to plug the -2 in, add 1 to it, and square it, which is going to give me -2, 1. That's going to be open there because of this. Then I'm going to plug in the 1, add 1 to it, and squaring it, giving me 1, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That will be closed. Then I'll draw my parabola like that. So if you had an issue in the middle, explain to me why your parabola was graphed incorrectly. And then this is a horizontal line at y equals 4, everywhere to the right of 1. So it should have gone like that. So again, I am going to give you a score out of 10 based on how well you corrected and explained your mistakes. If they're all corrected with no words, I will give you 5 out of 10. But 5 out of 10, you might think that's not a very good score. It's not. If you write exactly what I said on all of them and didn't have any independent thinking, I'll give you an 8 out of 10. But if you really interacted with your mistakes and figured out what you did wrong, I will give you a 10 out of 10. And furthermore, when I test you, you shouldn't do it again, right? See how it works? It's a great system. All right, awesome. You can turn those in stapled to your quiz, and I will replace your M with the corrections. Awesome. Have a good one. Peace out.